Hey everyone, that beautiful show promo. Guess what? It's me. It's the same voice. Hi everyone. Good morning. I hope you're having an eventful or relaxing or any type of morning that you want to have. Because you deserve that. You deserve that after the weekend, especially on a morning. Oh my goodness. Okay, so hey everyone, it's Natalia Marin. If you don't know this voice, I'm probably sure that you do, but welcome to our next episode, or this episode of Does It Work, a show where I, your lovely host, will evaluate if culture phenomenons, government systems, psychological theories actually work. In past episodes, we looked at things like the red nail theory, manifesting, superstitions, placebo effect, one of my faves. And today, our episode surrounds the Electoral College. Woo! Or maybe not woo, depending on how you see the Electoral College. Before I dive right in, thank you so much for listening. How are you? I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well. I don't live stream. Oh, maybe I should. But no one can see my outfit right now except for my roommates that saw it this morning. I have a vest on. I'm very official. And I'm wearing work pants and loafers, of course. Because, guys, we're talking about the Electoral College. This is probably one of our most serious episodes. It definitely is our most serious episode. Last time we talked about manifesting. Okay, it's a very serious episode. And it's about something very important. And I think that, generally people kind of know what the Electoral College is. Don't worry, we'll get into it a lot more. But I'm dressed up. I'm fancy, taking it seriously as it should be. But yeah, also, if you want to see the video, you'll see it later today, hopefully, or maybe on election day tomorrow. And make sure to subscribe. It doesn't work on YouTube. It's fun. You can see me in the studio laughing at myself, basically, on camera. So yeah, continuing on. So the Electoral College, let's get right into it. Might as well, I'm going to read a description of the Electoral College. I feel like I had something important to say. Oh yes, I did. Super duper duper important. Vote, everyone. If you haven't voted already, make sure to vote. You can drop off your ballot. If you had a mail-in ballot, I will be dropping off my ballot today. I am a first-time voter for a presidential election. I'm only 19, so that's really, really exciting. So make sure to vote. The Electoral College in this episode might get a little sad, but honestly, voting is so important, and I know that I'm just one of the a million people that have texted you, because I get those texts all the time, and man, they're annoying. But those people are really trying to get you to be politically engaged in our government, which is so important because the government decides how you live your life. So make sure that you tell them how you want to live your life, and that reflects yourself in your vote. Also, I would say your local systems and local propositions and all of that, also extremely, extremely important. There's a lot of important things on the ballot this year. So just make sure to vote, express your opinions, and you can't complain about how the government's working if you didn't vote. So if you like to complain, just so you know. But obviously, it's way more important than that. So please just vote. I think it's of utmost importance that we vote. Okay, now going into the Electoral College. I had something important to say. Yeah, it is, voting. Okay. Electoral College. I'm going to read it out off of this article from CBS, which actually was a really good article, so go CBS. But this is it, if you don't know what it is. It's basically how we vote. I think that everyone knows a basic detail, but let me just do it just to refresh our minds. When I was doing this, I'm like, I need a refresher how this works. Okay. The Electoral College is a process by which Americans elect their president and vice president indirectly through their state's electors. Candidates must secure 270 electoral votes, a majority of 538 at stake, in order to win the White House. Before the general election, states select state of electors. Sorry, that was confusing to me for a second. After voters cast their ballots in November, tomorrow, important, the candidate who wins the popular vote determines which state of electors Republican, Democrat, or third party will cast electoral votes in the Electoral College for the president. Oh, I didn't even know that. Okay, let's go back more into how it works. In most states, it's a winner-takes-all system. So whoever gets the most vote in the states wins all of its Electoral College votes, except in Maine and Nebraska. The rules are differently. They have proportional representation system in which the winner of each congressional district is awarded one electoral vote, so it kind of like splits the votes. Republicans really wanted to change Nebraska's rules, but they didn't. So Maine and Nebraska are different. So electors meet in their respective states in mid-December to cast their votes for the president. The meeting takes place on the first Tuesday after the second Wednesday in December, which falls on December 17th this year. That's a crazy date. But there are no constitutional provisions or federal law that requires electors to vote for the candidates to whom they are pledged, though they most always do. But faithless electors are rare, since electors are selected by parties. We'll get into faithless electors more, which I just think is absolutely bonkers. It blows my mind. But we'll get into that later if you don't quite understand that, which is okay because I really didn't. So there's 538 electoral votes across the 50 states and D.C. And so each of the votes, or like each of the allocated electors, is based on the size of the congressional delegation. Ooh. So like, let's say California, very big state, very big population, has 54 electors, and like Texas has 40. So states may gain or lose electors as the population shifts. There's been a number of changes since the 2020 presidential election. Like California lost one, Texas gained two, a lot of the states around Michigan lost one. You can look up the map later. So the electors are, they're chosen before the general election by their respective political party. Their sole purpose is to meet in the state following the November election to cast 2 votes, one for the president and one for the vice president. Okay. Well, let me do the Natalia summary of what I think the Electoral College is, of what it says the Electoral College is. We don't go off of thinking here. We do go off of thinking, but not my opinion. Okay, so the Electoral College, basically, there's different electors. Let's see Arizona. We're in Arizona. Let's see how many we have. We have 11. We have 11 electoral votes. So in the whole pie, it's 538 votes. So 11 of those are Arizona's and what Arizona believes. So if all of the congressional districts, if the majority of them, let's say, vote for Harris, then 11 of the electoral votes will go to Harris because we don't have the split ones like Nebraska and Maine. So 11 of our votes will go to Harris. So that's when you see the states turn blue or red. So California is mostly, I would say, almost exclusively. I don't think it's ever been red. I don't know. I'd have to fact check that. But that's known to be a blue state. So it's kind of predicted that 54 of the electoral votes of California will just automatically go to to Harris because it's a majority blue state. But there's some swing states or purple states like Arizona. So if you're in Arizona, it is so important that you vote to express your opinion because we don't know. We don't know who's going to win. There's a ton of other states like that, so it's important to vote, but those states are especially important to vote. And that kind of gets into the little bit of the logistical errors of the Electoral College, but that's basically how it works. And it's the electors. So there's 11 electoral votes and there's 11 electors that will cast the vote for the congressional districts. Okay, this is how we're working with. But sometimes there are faithless electors. So let's say let's make up something. In Arizona District 1, let's say it's for Harris. Let's say that district goes to Harris. This is all made up. But if our elector of District 1 is a faithless elector, then they can kind of choose who they want to cast their ballot for. So if they choose to cast their ballot for Trump, sorry, I was like, who's the other one? For Trump, then that means that their vote goes to Trump. But honestly, it's just kind of that they're faithless. It's not like Arizona's 11 will still go to Harris. It's a whole thing. I can get into it actually more later. Later. It's kind of confusing, but basically there's no rule in the Constitution that says that these electors have to. There's no constitutional provision or federal law that requires electors to vote for the candidate to whom they are pledged, though they almost do. Faithless electors are rare, so they almost always will vote for whoever that, but faithless electors do happen and did happen in the 2016 election where Trump won. I don't know if it happened in the 2020 election, but I was doing research and it said it happened. Okay, if you want to look more up to the Electoral College, like what it actually is, I suggest you look it up. Hopefully I explained it well enough just so we can get like a basis of understanding, and then I'll explain it a lot more later. Also, this episode will be content dense, just so you know. I did a lot of research for this because I want to get it right. I want to say where Americans stand at the moment of whether they think the whole debate that's happening, if you didn't know, that the Electoral College is, a lot of people think that it should be abolished, and some people think that it shouldn't. So that's the debate that we're kind of talking about today, and then we'll decide what doesn't work, the show thinks. So where Americans stand. In a 2023 Pew Research poll, 68% of Americans said that the president should be elected through popular vote, not through the Electoral College. And there's been hundreds of proposals, almost 800, I'm pretty sure, that have been introduced into Congress to change the process, Canadian coming out. Over the years, there has been a multiple state effort called by the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, which we'll talk about that later too, which is basically just like a proposal by 17 states and DC. That would ensure that the winner of the popular vote gets all of the electoral votes in that state. So a lot of people want the popular vote because there's been 5 times in history that, 6 times in history where the president has won the Electoral College but did not win the popular vote. And that was a lot of a controversy in the 2016 election versus Hillary and Trump, Clinton and Trump, where Trump did not win the popular vote. He actually lost by 2.87 million votes. That's a lot of votes. And so he lost by that. So he lost the popular vote, but he won the election and then became our president for 4 years. So that was kind of a lot of the controversy because they're like, America, technically the most amount of people in America didn't elect him. That's what the popular vote is, if you didn't know. But yeah, so on election night, this is when I was talking about the faithless electors. So on election night, Trump won 306 of the electors and Clinton won 232. However, because of 7 faithless electors, 5 Democrats, and 2 Republicans, Trump received 304 votes and Clinton 227. So they kind of went, you can do the math there. But that's kind of how it moved around, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, so this is so content dense, but we get it. So that's kind of like where Americans stand. 65% of Americans say that it should be popular vote. So that's a lot of Americans, majority, over half, saying it should be popular vote. So let's go into why. Like, why did the Electoral College happen? It's a really weird system, and I urge you to look into it and be educated yourself and not just go off of my definitions. But it's a weird system, so like, why did that happen? So, according to the National Archives, the foundation, I wrote this wrong. The Founding Fathers, not the Foundation Fathers. The Founding Fathers saw that the Electoral College as a middle ground between giving the decision to the Congress or to directly vote by citizens. Proponents say it keeps less populous states from being underrepresented by discouraging candidates from campaigning disproportionately in urban centers that are more heavily populated. Okay, so basically, the Founding Fathers, let's just say the Founding Fathers, said that the Electoral College, they wanted to make sure that the smaller states, which during the time of this, when was that they had they had very small states during this time. So they wanted to make sure that they were represented. We'll go into a lot of the history later, so don't even worry if you think I'm not explaining something properly. So they wanted to have that the smaller states were represented as well as the bigger states. Okay. So that's why the Electoral College system was created, and they also didn't want the now people who are favorable for the Electoral College is saying that it would prevent because Texas and California, what I was saying before, super big Electoral College votes. So they want that they think that candidates would just disproportionately elect and campaign there instead of the urban centers. I mean, in the urban centers that are heavily populated, since I think that kind of makes sense, since there's more Electoral College votes. So that's what current modern day proponents of the Electoral College say. This is a opinion and not in the facts. Oh, this is in the facts. I was saying my opinion, but no, this is the facts. That still happens today in purple states. So that's an argument against the Electoral College, that there is campaigning disproportionately just in states like Arizona. There's been a lot of Trump and Harris rallies here because it's a purple state, so it can go either way. So that's another thing of against the Electoral College. Campaigning disproportionately is just kind of bound to happen. Also, people will say that since most of the population is in places like California and Texas, it would make sense because the population should choose who is getting elected, the majority of the people in the United States. But again, disproportionately campaigning. Let's go into more of the challenges. Also, I do have the DJ shift after this, so this episode might run a little bit over 9:30. I mean, just so we can get it all straight, I think it's very important that we do. So let's go into some of the challenges. So the Electoral College, as most things in the United States, was built on racist systems. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. So there is a lot of racism and times that go into this. Founding fathers, that's when slavery was still legal. Something that was just incredibly awful of a system that was extremely dehumanizing and awful, and I don't need to say that anymore. But slavery was legal then. So this ties into the Electoral College. So this is by this writer who is his very talented book, and it's about kind of the Electoral College and kind of the backings of it. Their name's Kessler. So both during slavery and also after slavery, well into the 20th century, in fact, the states of the South stood firmly in opposition to the adoption of the national popular vote. So the South was in opposition during the period of slavery because slaveholding states received an extra electoral votes thanks to the 3/5 clause. So white Southerners gained influence in the Electoral College, and if they switched to the national popular vote, then they would have lost that influence. If you do not know what the 3/5 compromise is, that's important to understanding this. It was an agreement between the North and Southern states that essentially that only 3/5 or 60% of slave populations would be counted to determine representation in the House of Representatives and the electors in the Electoral College. So Southern states used slave populations to increase their political influence without having recognized slaves as equals to whites. Most enslaved people also did not have voting rights. So this is the whole thing that kind of makes it interesting. Or not interesting, but kind of awful, this history to this system. So the 3/5 compromise allowed the enslaved population to be counted in these votes. So that's way more because enslaved people were not able to vote, and black people back then were also not able to vote. So that would increase their electoral votes by so much. So that's why a lot of the white Southerners, and this kind of history behind it is imperative to understanding the Electoral College, because it was built off of slavery. So I think that good enough summary, but I would encourage you to look to sources that are way smarter than me to discuss this thing. But that's a brief history about the foundings of the Electoral College and its problematic undertones that it has. But I had to discuss that. Obviously, it's very important. Moving on. So going off of that's incredibly awful of the background of this. A lot of people will also say that another challenge to the Electoral College, a modern day challenges. So we were in the history, now we're going to modern day challenges. There's unequal voting power depending on where you live. So the Electoral College gives disproportionate voting power to states, favoring the small states with more electoral votes per person. Obviously, this is literally what we just discussed. So people think that it's kind of crazy that states that are so small and have a very small population that's more important, that have a small population, not that they're small, that they have a small population, get the amount of electoral votes that they get, so that their vote is way more it gives them more voting power than states that have bigger votes. So that's one of them. Also, this is a stat that made me sad a little bit. It'll probably make you sad too. In the 2000 presidential election, we're going all the way back here, even though 100 million people voted in that election, only a small portion of those votes, in fact, were decisive. So the results would have been the exact same if nearly 80 million of those voters would have stayed home. I'm just going to let you sit with that. Isn't that insane? That is crazy. 80 million people would have just stayed home. It would have been the same. So that means only 20 million of people's votes counted during the 2000 presidential election. And if you can look up modern day stats. I couldn't find a one from a reliable source, so I didn't want to include it here. But they're near the same. So that's kind of another issue with the Electoral College, as well as what I was saying earlier with the popular vote. So the popular vote obviously is the most amount of people vote for this person, and that's a lot of the argument that everyone wants to switch the popular vote because they just think it's more fair, which I can understand. So that's a lot of. There's been 6 times that the presidential election was not won by the popular vote and the Electoral College. It usually happens. I mean, obviously, there's 6 times, and we have over 50 presidents. So. There's only been 6 times that's happened, and people think that that's very unfair and that shouldn't, if the majority of people vote for them, then they should get elected, obviously. So that's some of the challenges, and maybe we'll go into more. Faithless electors, again, is crazy. And other ones, just looking up very quickly, a lot of the two-party system, a lot of that leads to voters being the lesser of two evils. So people kind of will vote for the lesser of two evils rather than a candidate they feel would do the best job, or that they feel that they have to vote with their party. That's a lot of issues with the two-party system. Maybe another Does It Work episode can go into that later. But also a lot of people will say that it discourages people from voting because in some states, maybe your vote is not as powerful. I don't like to say your vote doesn't matter because your vote matters. Please vote. But maybe your vote is not as powerful as it is in other states. So it discourages people from voting, which is another argument for why the Electoral College is not great. But for people who believe that the Electoral College works, this person from the Heritage Foundation said that the Electoral College is a carefully considered structure that the framers of the Constitution set up to balance the competing interests of large and small states. So it prevents candidates from winning an election by focusing only on high population urban centers, ignoring smaller states and the more rural areas of the country. The Electoral College, forces candidates to seek the support of a larger cross-section of the American electorate to win a series of regional elections. So this is another thing, so I don't know how to say this last name, Spakovsky, It's the same guy. He actually also works for the Heritage Foundation. He said that even though people were really upset when Clinton lost in the 2026 election, he said that it is a perfect example of why the Electoral College works, because it's better than the original system. He didn't really go into much explanation of why, but he just says because the Electoral College favors kind of like the general overarching thing of that it favors both states rather than just really large states. But also it's important to know that like some defenders of the Electoral College have also used like the racist and racial undertones of the beginning of this system. Former Mayor Gov Paul LePage said that abolishing the current system would marginalize white people. It's this article, which I encourage you, again, on my YouTube channel, I'll link everything that I talk about, and this CNN article, which was just really, really well written. Sorry. And it's in that CNN article, and you can look into more why he says the system would marginalize white people. But basically, actually, I'll read it to you. So it says, actually, what would happen if they say what they're going to do is white people will not have anything to say. It's going to be minorities that would elect. It would be California, Texas, Florida, and all smaller states like Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Wyoming, Montana, Rhode Island, majority white populations, that he is saying. You'll never see a presidential candidate again. And so, not great people. But that's kind of why people think that it does work. So it's such an important topic that I'm worried that I'm not saying the whole thing. But again, I obviously do your own research. Never just go to one source for all of your information. But so if people don't think it works, then what are people suggesting, which I think is an important thing to go into, which I told you we're going to go a little bit over 9:30, which is fine. But so the founding, since the founding of the United States, there's been almost 800, like what I said earlier, congressional attempts to amend, abolish, or like change the Electoral College. It has been changed a few times, which allows electors to cast one vote for president, one for vice president. And the 20th Amendment put a limit on the process, and the 23rd Amendment gave electors to the District of Columbia, D.C., whose famous license plates say taxation without representation, which I just think is iconic. Look that up if you want to. It's an interesting. I'm not spreading misinformation, right? When I was in DC, I loved DC when we went. I went with my family. Oh yeah, it does say it. Okay, good. I was like, am I spreading? No, I think that's funny. If you want to look into why they say that, please look that up. It's very important. So changing of the Constitution, why it's so hard to change the Electoral College system is that changing of the Constitution takes years and requires majorities in Congress and state legislatures, which I think we know is very hard to get things passed because everyone wants to be right. So also the smaller states that benefit from the Electoral College would have to give up some of their power, which would be difficult to convince them to do. Politics have also played a role in preserving it. It goes without saying that Republicans are they believe that the Electoral College is more beneficial to their party, which it is. So they're less likely to vote for something that kind of eliminates the Electoral College. So what I was talking about earlier, so the National Popular Vote in-State Compact, it's agreement among the U.S. states and some of the U.S. states, like 17, and D.C., which will award all of the electoral votes to the presidential ticket that wins the most popular overall in the 50 states and D.C. So they, this compact that they signed, that if it ever, I hope it does, but if it does go into agreement, then all of them, like it's kind of like an agreement so that they will all do this and enact it immediately. But basically, these states see it as that they need to transition to the popular vote and not stay within the same electoral college vote. But it's very difficult to get things passed, like I said, in the Constitution. It requires a lot of years. So let's go into my evaluation of the Electoral College. This is something that I have studied for a very long time, being within the U.S. and the U.S. education system. I've known about it for a while, and this is my opinion. It personally never really made sense to me, seeing that we're not, even when it was created, it didn't really make sense either. I think that it even is proven within all of this that I've said to you, and again, fact check me, look this up, that it is not a system that works. It's not a system that works, and it's extremely not a system that works in 2024. And the arguments of that people would only target urban areas is a baseless argument in the fact that there's already campaign targeting. I would say in Arizona, there has been so much Harris and Trump rallies and campaign events, stuff like that, just because we're a purple state. So that happens in purple states too. So it's not like that's going to change. Also, the population, if the popular vote, that would be what the majority of citizens want. So if the majority of your citizens want to elect someone, I think it's logical that person would get elected. I don't think that's irrational to be saying that, because that's how democracy works. Democracy I've just looked it up. It's a system of government in which state power is vested in the people. In the people of the United States. It's vested in the people of the United States. The American Democratic Republic is currently what we have, but it's a representative democracy. So our government is elected by the citizens. Therefore, it makes sense if the popular vote is put in place, because then our government would truly be elected by the citizens. And I am not saying anything that hasn't been said a million times before, or that you can't look up. It's a very common opinion, but I think that it's important for people to realize that if we want to truly be represented, and the American people want to feel themselves represented in our United States government, then the Electoral College is really not the system that works. And it does it work? I don't think it works. And it's has an awful history, like I had said, and racist undertones that are and just not, you can't overlook that. And it's a system that is just not efficient. It wasn't efficient when it was put in place, and it's not efficient anymore, and we should change it, but I don't know if that's ever going to happen. We can only hope that would ever happen, if our government sees that that's an important thing to happen and realizes the will of the people, 65%, in fact, like I said earlier. So, yeah, I think that's the does it work opinion on this episode. I don't know if that's a surprise to anyone, but just so you know. Also, I would implore you to become more informed about how the government works. It's important. It's your livelihood that depends on the government. So you need to be an educated citizen. Educated citizens are the best, because then you know what's happening in your government, and you know how to fix it, and you know who to vote for, what to vote for. It's extremely important. So I implore you to be educated. It takes not that long to look up the propositions on your ballot and to see who's funding them and to see what's the pros and cons against voting yes or voting no. So just be an informed citizen. You live here, might as well make it the best place to live, and you can only do that by voting. So no, the Electoral College doesn't work because everything that we said in this episode. So if you have any comments on this episode, I would love to hear them. Comment them on Instagram at Does It Work Show. DM them. I'd love to hear that. Also on YouTube, they'll be uploaded later, so you can comment all you want on that. I'll listen and possibly respond. So we've reached the final segment a little bit to lighten it up a little bit. Works for me. So it's my unscientific, unresearched thing that has been working for me recently. So my thing, this is breaking news. I don't know if you've ever heard of this thing. It's called reading. And I... it's such a funny thing to like go from talking about such a serious topic to talking about me reading. But yeah, I think that, and it's honestly not even just reading, but something that's working for me, I think just like shutting off your mind, especially during like the election season, it can get kind of crazy, stressful even. So it's important to take a sec to realize to not do anything, not do work, not do homework, just sit, maybe watch a movie. My roommates and I have been doing that recently, shout out. Or to read a book, practice suturing. That's an inside joke for my roommates. One of my roommates brought a suture kit home, and they were working on that. Look that up if you want. It's really interesting. Crazy stuff. But yeah, like just something fun like that. Just shutting off your brain and focusing on something that is not impacting me. Turn off your phone. I'm a social media gal through and through, but sometimes that thing gets kind of crazy. So yeah, just make sure to take care of yourself, take care of your mental health. And it's important, and I just it's the mental health, the mental health. Everything that you do is important, but like it is. And if you want to really focus on what the important issues, you also have to take care of yourself. And that's what I was trying to say this whole time. But yeah, final reminder, please vote. You can look at it. If you haven't dropped in your mail, if you live in Arizona, I do not know if this goes for everywhere else. Please look it up. If you haven't dropped in your mail-in ballot, you can drop it in, obviously, at a drop-in box. But if you are registered to vote and you haven't done your mail-in ballot at all, you can go to your county, like in-person voting, and vote tomorrow as well. Make sure to look up all the laws and legislations of voting and stuff like that. Vote, please. I think if this episode has proved anything to you, it's important to express your opinion in government. So make sure to vote. Please do that. Thank you so much for listening. Remember to follow me on Instagram at @AtaliaMarin_, and this show on Instagram at Does It Work Show. These episodes will be on YouTube later. This one will be very quickly on YouTube because I want to hear your guys' opinions, and I will provide all the links to everything I use in the description. Also, do your own research. Look it up. All of these topics are very interesting, especially this one, and you need to be informed. So thank you so much again, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.